This conference will now be recorded.
So now what I'll do, I'll just create the resource group for every day I do, of course. So Sandeep is not yet joined, I guess, Jaipal. Okay. So now I'm going to create the resource group. So I use South India is fine. Then I'll go into create a virtual machines under that resource group. So go into the virtual machine. Today I'm going to create the Linux virtual machines basically. So it picked up the resource group. It is only one available. That's fine. If you have multiple, you have to choose what you wanted. So example VM1, VM01, and then location region is South India. That's fine. And what I wanted actually here, we have lots of different, CentOS, Red Hat, Enterprise Linux, Ubuntu. All these are Linux families, guys. You know, like any of the operating system operations wise, it is absolutely same. There is no much difference basically. Let's go with the Ubuntu server. All are almost same. There is nothing much difference. So now there are two types of authentication. These two are important. How do you authenticate with the machine? How do we connect to the machines? We are going to talk about that. So I'm going to talk about password authentication first, then I'll talk about SSH authentication. We will talk both of them. Okay. So there are a lot of discussions need to be done to understand SSH authentication first. So first I'm going to the password authentication initially. I'll give the account name. That is my account I'm giving all as usual. So password again it has to be it should have uppercase, lowercase, special character, and numeric combination.
One down.
Yeah, yeah.
What is the difference between Windows and Linux? I don't know about that. Why we are using Linux in the Azure as a
It's you see
for this?
Azure previously when it is launched, it used to support only Windows servers. Now they wanted to attract everyone, like they wanted to give the cloud service, even people who are working the Linux side as well, like Oracle and all work on the Linux environment, right? So they also come to the Azure and then build their environment. They are given the diversified. It's not like only one platform. Always Microsoft gives Windows the Microsoft products only, but this cloud platform is can be used by anyone, not only Windows people. Basically, that's why they included these services. This
Okay.
is this is for the other people also, like who are working in non-Windows products. Non-Windows means Linux is not a Windows product, basically. They also can come to the Azure cloud and they can also build their environment. They are supporting everything basically in the cloud.
Okay.
Difference wise, it's quite different operating system. It is a command-based operating system. Windows is a wizard-based operating system, and it is developed by someone else. It is like that. So now the Linux system will listen on the port 22 basically. The Windows will 3389. This will go with the SSH. Okay. It will go with the SSH connections. Like RDP is equivalent to SSH in the Linux basically. Okay. So if I create there was a question from you only. If I create, like a machine, directly will it join the domain? If it is your on-premise domain server and the cloud, there will be by default Azure Active Directory. If these are already integrated, if I create a machine, automatically machine will go into the domain. That should be done. The integration part should be done with the Azure cloud. How do you do the integration? We have the discussion. I'm going to discuss that. I create a user in the on-premise domain server, and that user can directly log in into the cloud using his credentials. We have the topic in the Windows AD. Like when I started the Active Directory part, comes in the ninth module. There I'll discuss about this part. How you can make the server into the domain directly. That part will come later on. So somehow we need one account to connect at the moment. So if it is a domain, then domain people can directly log in. That is a different case. But one has to be there. Even the domain is not able to log in to troubleshoot the server. This is one guy by default. So I'm allowing this port to connect through SSH connection. So next, I'm not going to add a disk at the moment. I'll add the disk later on. I can add it to the machine. How do we add it? We are going to see that. So networking also we are not worried about. It is picking up a default, and I'm going to explain this tab at least 5, 6 classes. Why? Because networking is a vast topic again. That is very important to understand, especially. First network will be created, then machines will be created in real time. Network design is mandatory first. So that's why we will spend a lot of time on that area as well. The rest, management, extra plugins, you wanted to have extra plugins and then tags if you wanted to, you can do it. So I'm just creating the Linux virtual machine. Okay, it is taking extra charge because I have chosen very big machine. This is not required for Linux. 1 GB, 1 RAM is more than enough. Linux machine does not load lots of libraries like Windows. It can run with the lowest configuration at maximum speed. So that is enough. And I'll go to the disk also. I don't want the premium. Standard is enough for us. Great. So now the cost of the machine is 95 paisa now. Just per hour, I have to pay for this machine 95 paisa per hour. If I use this machine for half an hour, then I'll pay, like pay per minute. In the cloud, it is a pay per minute, not for pay per hour. If I use half an hour, I'll pay for half an hour only. If it is in AWS pay per hour. If I use half an hour, you have to pay for the 1 hour. That's it. Don't have a per minute billing. They have a per hour billing. But Azure has a per minute billing. How many minutes you use? They'll calculate with a minute by minute, not by hours. That's a good thing. Let me create one more VM, Linux VM, because I need to take you through certain operations. So here also I'll choose the resource group, this one, and then I'll make this one as VM2. Then Ubuntu is fine, so I'll choose a small machine. And this is also password authentication. Okay, then I need to open the RDP port to connect to the server. And I'll go with the standard disk. I don't want the premium disk. Networking, everything is fine. Creating this machine as well. This will take roughly 2 minutes or 1.5 minutes to get created. Let's wait for that to happen, and then we'll try to connect it. Just a minute. Fine. So how do I connect to the Linux machines? Can I use MSTSC? No, we cannot use that way. You have to use Putty tool to connect to the Linux machines, right? So how do I get that tool? Just to go to the Google, download Putty for Windows 10, right? So just go to the first one, download Putty for Windows 10 64-bit. Just to go to the first link, and you have it is landed with the different options here. And download Putty. You go with the first one. Putty is an SSH and Telnet client developed originally by. This is something we use it like Putty tool. I don't want this bitwise SSH client and all. This is enough for us. When you click over there, it also given lots of details. So what you wanted, what you are running on the machine is matters. So now MSI Windows installer alternative SSH. This is the one we wanted actually. SSH. So SSH for the 64-bit I wanted. Like 64-bit. I have the operating system 64. That's why I'm picking up 64-bit. If you have a 32-bit, go with the 32-bit one. So just click it over. It is a small exe file. It's not too large file. It is very small file. See here, it is only 835 KB file. Now, when you open it, it will ask the server details to connect. Very simple it is. You don't need to install this thing actually. Just download this exe file and run it. That's it. It will not install basically. So now by default, it is picking up port number 22. All Linux machines will default machines, port to connect to the RDP is 22 itself. All environments, like it is a Linux, else Ubuntu, Red Hat, whatsoever it is. Let me try to hit this server using the IP. IP of this machine is 100. Okay. Now I'll use that machine IP and paste it. And the port is already given. I'm trying to connect to that server. So keep it yes. You wanted to connect. So now I'm going to give the login name which I use in the cloud when I have created it. You guys can see it, right? Do you want me to make a bit bigger, right? You had. It won't become bigger. What? And this way, right? Is it visible, guys?
Yes, sir.
Okay, then fine. Fine. So now I'm using my username, which I used when I was creating the VM, and then I'll give the password which I used during the VM creation. Once I do this, connect. So I have connected to the server. Then when I connected, if I wanted to know with what username I have connected, I wanted to check example. Who am I? Who am I? It will tell you who is connected to the server, that myself. And what is the server name? You just go to the host name. It will tell you the server name, VM01. And I wanted to know the full domain name also. Then you have to give host name hyphen hef. Like if this will give you full name. This tag equivalent to full. So if I give this is the full name of the VM server in the cloud. This is a VM full name in the cloud. Where you find it basically, that full name VM01. If you go to the properties,
Subscriber ID.
here is
Subscriber ID.
it's not the subscriber ID. It is something the cloud has. It will append with the cloud details basically. Like if you go to internal cloud app.net, if it is a Windows server, Windows .net at the end, it will follow that naming convention basically. So you don't need to use all these basically when you're trying to, because we are going with the IPs. So you can also use this particular thing to connect when you are actually into the network through the VPN. No need to give the complete name, because the naming conventions also can be changed because the domain is integrated with the Azure AD. That will talk in the Windows itself, not now. So now I have connected using my user and where I am at the moment into my current directory. When you connect to the server, everyone will have a default profile like home plus user. Everyone will be having their home directory, every user in the Linux. Like if I connect with a different user, then the different user also will have its own home directory. So now I wanted to switch it to the sudo. Sudo means administrator, because I wanted to do some admin operations. If I wanted to do some admin operations, I had to switch it to the sudo user. Sudo means administrator in the Linux. Okay. Sudo is switch user to root. So it is automatically took me to the root without asking the password. It should ask the password. Why it did not ask me the password? Because I am also the root user. Because when the machine is created by default, I am also the administrator. If I'm not the administrator, if I'm trying to switch to the root user, I need to know the root password to enter into the root. Okay. If you are a root user, then that's why it is not asking the root user password. Else, like I'm already part of the root users group. That's why it is not asking the password. Else, it will ask the password basically. So now, what are the disks we have on the server? What are the file system we do have on the server? You can find like this: dh hyphen df-h disk file system. We are reading the disk file system, and this machine, these are the file system by default will get created, like like a tempfs, like dev run dev. These are all something like Linux file system. We don't go through all this everything has a different significance in the background. uh, uh, you know in C drive there will be a lot of plugins by the OS itself, right? The same way it is here also. If I create, so all mount points will go to here, and like dev shm, run directories, like binaries and all. So I'm not going to cover all this basically. This is a file system, OS file system basically. You don't touch that area. You have to let it be the way it is. Okay. So now I also have another machine in the cloud, which one I just created, right? Another virtual machine called VM02. Now I'll also connect to that machine from other putty session. How do I connect? I need to take the VM IP. I'm going to show how to do the RDP to one machine to another machine. The IP of this machine is 226 at the end. The other one is 100. So now connecting to this machine as well, using the login which I used during the creation. You can see here the IP. The previous one was 100. This is 226. So now I'm giving the password. Fine. Now here also I wanted to switch it to sudo user because we are going to do the admin operations. So now I wanted to connect to this machine. Which machine? This machine. How do I connect? We do have a like SSH. You have to do the SSH, and you're doing the RDP using whose credentials. You have to mention that I have a credential like Ravinder is the one who is authorized to enter it into that server and enter the IP of that machine. So okay, this is the second machine IP. I need to take the first machine IP. Where can I take the first machine IP? I have to go to this machine. In Linux, you have to do this way, connecting to the RDP machine from one machine to other machine. So now what I'll do, let me do host name. What is a host name here? Sorry. Host name is VM02. Now what I'll do, I'm doing the SSH into the other server, which means the RDP. And using SSH means the RDP is saying that, and with whose credentials you wanted to enter into that server. This is the credential, Ravinder. I'm entering to that server now. Yes, like, are you sure you wanted to continue connecting to that server? Yes. And he'll ask the password. Please type yes, okay. And enter that password of that user. Now I connected to the VM1. It is written also. You can see VM01. If I look at host name, VM01. Now I'm into the VM01 server. I actually logged into VM02, then I switched it to VM01. Now I have to go back, then I have to exit this session, then it will go to VM02. So it will go to the previous session. It's like that. So doing the RDP is very, very simple. SSH, the user who has a like a valid user on the target machine, and then give the IP and then give the password. That's it. Connecting to the remote servers, you will connect in the Linux like this. That's it. But there is a situation. I'm going to explain. Uh, there will be admin jobs. Admin jobs. This is one server. This is another server, and let me make small. 1, 2, 3, and this is one server where I'm running a job. And this job also should do the same thing in other servers also. Go to all the servers in the background and do the same kind of operation what I'm doing in this server. So job should connect to all other servers and do the operation. How it will do using the SSH authentication. How do we do the SSH authentication? I'm going to explain right away. So this is something for the admin operations. I'm doing a job which actually running something on the OS to pick the files or to get the statistics or to do anything that I wanted on a, like on all servers, not on a single server. Then we will run the job using the SSH public key authentication. What is that authentication? Let's go and talk about that. This is going to be a bit confusing, I feel. Better to pay attention here. Very simple it is. We have connected with the normal authentication like username and password. Here, I no need to give the password at all. If I do the SSH authentication, I have to supply the public key of this machine into other servers so that when I connect to other servers, I no need to give the password. Just to follow it. So we have a command called SSH keygen. This will generate the public keys, SSH public keys basically automatically. You don't need to do anything, just to run the command on the OS with the root user basically. If I run this one, oh sorry, SSH keygen actually. So I'll just clear this. Okay, I guess. So SSH hyphen keygen. If I use this thing, it will generate the public keys. Okay, so it is generating the public keys in this directory. Okay, I'm in the root user. Okay, I don't want to do it from here then. I'll use it from my user itself. Exit from the root user. I don't need to do it from the root user. Why? Because my user is also admin user. So I can do that. I can run the admin operations using my user as well. So now I'll run the same command. SSH keygen. So it is saying that it is enter the file in which you wanted to save. It is already given a folder. I wanted to let it create in the same folder. If I wanted to give some other folder, it will get created in the other folder. So that's fine. The default folder is fine with me. Enter the paraphrase empty for now. See, you no need to give a, like paraphrase here. When you are using that key, you also again have to give the paraphrase. So again, you are authenticating using that paraphrase. So we don't want that. Generally, we don't give this paraphrase. Okay. If you give it again, you have to give that so that it will, then only it will authenticate with the remote machine. So we don't want to authenticate. We want directly going to that machine without giving any password. So that's why we are doing this. If we are giving this again, it will ask that. So we don't want that. So go with the blank. Enter the paraphrase again. No, we don't want. So it is generated a keys. Where it is generated the keys actually, it is given the directory home Ravinder SSH. Okay, this is a by default. This folder will be there everywhere. Only it is generated this thing actually. This is a file it is generated. This is a private key and it will also generate the public key. Let me where I am actually in the current working directory. Present work PWD means present working directory. I am into the home Ravinder here. Now if I look at ls, I mean, what are the files I have here? ls-l in my directory. I don't have any file basically. So I'm going to call directory SSH. I'm into the SSH folder. If I do ls, I have the files. So what files I have actually? I have one is this is a private key file and this is a public key file basically. I need to publish this key into the remote server so that I don't need to authenticate again and again using my password. So this is the thing I'm doing, guys. I'm generating a public key in this server. I'm exporting this public key into this server. So what I'm trying to do, let me explain. So I'm creating a public key. Okay, and I'm taking this public key. I'm taking this particular public key. How do I select this? Okay, so I'm taking this public key and pasting it here as well. When I have to connect to from this machine to this machine, it will try to search for this public key. If this public key is matching from this machine to this machine, it is matching, it will directly enter into that server because you are authenticated using the public key. Public key is matching in both the servers. If I also have to connect to this server also, by default I need to export this public key again, what I generated there, and load into this server, so that first it will verify the public key matching or not. If it is not matching, it will go for the password authentication. If it is matching, it does not ask you to enter the password at all. So that's how it works internally. So that is what I'm doing now. I created a public key, I'm exporting to the target server, and then enter into authorized keys. So let me do that. I'm into the VM01 at the moment. Okay, not here. I guess I have done here on the VM01 itself. Okay, now I wanted to export the file into the VM02. Let me switch this to VM0 exit, and I'm into the VM01 and I'm into the root, so exit from the root. Okay, I'm into my current directory. If I call SSH, by default there will be SSH folder. You don't need to create that folder basically. Now if I do ls, I have only authorized keys. If I wanted to read the authorized keys, let me read it. Authorized keys. If I read this, there is nothing. The file does not have anything at the moment. It is an empty file, this authorized keys. In the VM02, I am into the VM02 server, and this authorized key is just empty. I'm reading the file cat authorized, right? I don't have anything. Now I'm going to export this public key, and load into that file. So now how will I do that? So let me read that file. Which file? This public key file. So cat id underscore. So now if I read this file, it has the key. This key I'm going to, this is a randomly generated key. No one can, guess this, what is this key kind of. This is, 2048 bit encrypted key it is. No one can guess this is something kind of, no one can hack it actually using these keys. These are highly secured. So only you generated, you only know the key. That's it. No one else knows because it's such a randomly generated key it is. So now I wanted to export this public key into the target and load into the authorized key. So how will I export from this machine to that machine? We will see now. So there is a command called SCP, secured copy program in the Linux. We will use this command to export the data from one server to another server. If it is a Windows server, what we do? Generally, if it is a Windows server, how do we share the data between the servers? If it is a Windows, you do this way. This is a one server, this is another server. You create a file share, okay, like this. You create a file share, you export the data here, and then you import the data to here. That way you do in the Linux, in the Windows server. In the Linux, it's not like that. Directly you can push the data. If both the servers are communicating on the network, you can push it to same home directories. You need to have your account in both the servers, in the target server also, else it will not do that. You need to have your directory. So now what I'm doing is I'm pushing the file into the target server, SCP, and what file I wanted to push actually, authorized keys. Okay, why it is actually, I'm entering only auth and like this thing, and then it is coming up automatically. The file there, you just hit the tab. If the file is there, it will automatically pull that. If I have multiple file which authorized itself, then it will go through the file by file. What I mean to say, let me explain this very quickly. ls, I have one file here in the VM02. I'm creating another file. It is a file actually, it's not a directory. You can see if it is a directory, the first letter will be D. Okay, first letter will be D here. It is a file. So if I wanted to create a file, I use touch file 1 and file 2. I'm creating two files using just small command. If I go with ls-l, and I have three files now, file 1, file 2, and if I wanted to call scp example file, what file will come first? First one, like it is just taking the common one, and you have to enter example. If I have one, means one. If I have multiple ones, then it will go through one by one, file by file. So no need to enter whole thing, just hit tab. If the key is matching, it will pull up that file name. And you have to, if you know the complete name, you can directly enter. That's fine. How it is doing, I just wanted to show that. So now I'm into this directory. From this directory only you can push it to the target. Why? Because I need to give the path if when I'm doing it. I mean, I'm into the directory and I have the file inside the directory. I'm going to pick that file. Sorry, not here actually. Here we are going to push the file to here. I need to do it from this one. Why? Because the file is here. So if I look at where I am, pwd into the home ravinder.ssh directory, and what I'll do, I have the file. Which file? This file. I wanted to push this file to the target server. How will I do? SCP and file name. You have to enter the file name. It came up. See, I'll keep the zero. I mean dot. Next, it will pick up that file name. Why? Because after dot there is only one file. Now I need to enter who actually can go to the remote server and do it. Ravinder. Ravinder at the rate and that server IP. This is a VM01. I need the VM2 IP to connect to that server. I'm connecting to the remote server. SCP secure copy program. I wanted the file, which file I wanted to push it. I'm selected already. I'm using the Ravinder who can go to that server. Okay. And this colon at the end, you have to keep the colon. That way is the end of the command. If I hit this command, this will push this file, this file into the target server automatically. Another server. This is how you move the files in the Linux servers using the SCP secure copy program. If I hit it, are you sure you wanted to continue connecting? Yes, I wanted. It is asking the password because I need to authenticate with the remote server. So I'm giving that user password. Once I do that, it will push the file to target. So now it is copied. This file is copied to the target server. So this is the VM1. Let me go to the VM2 now. So where I am actually pwd, I'm into SSH. I don't want into the SSH. I'll go cd dot dot. Then I'll go to the previous directory. And then if I look at here, I'm into the home directory. Now if I ls here, the file will be there, which I pushed it. This is the file I pushed it, idrsa.pub. Now if I read this file, example, if I'm reading this file, this is a key. It came from the VM1 and we are into the VM2 now. Now I'm going to upload this file into the authorized key file into this server. So I'll go to the cd ssh. Where do we have that file? Here. And if I go to ls-long listing, and inside this file, I'm going to put this key so that machine can come to this machine without asking a password. So let me do one thing before I do this. So now I'm into the VM1. Okay, I want to enter into the VM2. What is the command? Tell me. From VM1 to VM2, how will I enter?
SSH.
Yeah, SSH.
Hostname.
Huh?
Hostname.
Username actually.
Ravinder @hostname.
Yeah, that's correct. So I'm entering into the VM2. So then IP I need. IP I need. So if I do this one, now I can go into the target server, but it will ask the password at the moment because I did not upload the key yet. Once I uploaded the key, it will not ask. That is what I wanted to show. Fine, it is entered to the VM2 because I given the password. Now hostname, if I look at to just verify VM2, I'm exiting and coming back to the VM1 itself. Now come back to here. In the VM2, I'm into the VM2 where I'm doing now. VM2. Now what I'm going to do, I'm going to put this output into the authorized keys, this file. Okay. Now pwd I am into the SSH key. I don't want to be there. Why? Because the file is into the my home directory. cd dot dot going back. Now if I look at here, uh, ls-l, I have this file here. Okay. Now if I wanted to read it, I use this way. I read it. Cat. Okay, I'm into the same directory. Now what I'm going to do, I'm reading the file again, id, and I wanted to put this file, the output of that file, I wanted to push it to .ssh directory, and I'm going to mention that file name, which file authorized. So now what I'm saying is, to this command, cat this file, it is reading, and that output it is pushing to SSH directory. It is going to SSH directory. Within that directory, it is loading the output into this particular file. If I do this one, it is the output. This was the output, right? This output went into this file now using this command. The cat will read the file. When you give this thing up, I'm telling that take this file output and push it to this file. Why? Because I given the directory, I given the file name. Okay, if I wanted to put the same output into other file also, I can put it. Like I also have the file one, right? I have created it here itself, or file one, I guess. I created a file one. If I do this one, that output is available in two files. Let me check that. Go to here, call SSH, call directory. Now this is where the authorized key is sitting, right? ls hyphen long listing. Now if I read cat authorized keys, I'll have the that keys data. See, previously it was not there, it was empty. Now I also read the other file one, I guess, right? This also has the same key because I push the key into two files just to show you just to make you understand. Now what I'll do, the key is available in this server, which means that I push this key into this server. This server should not ask me the password anymore. It should authenticate directly with this machine. Let me do it from here now. So I'm in the VM1, VM01. Okay, I'm trying to connect to the VM02. How will I do? SSH username at the rate and the IP of that machine. IP of that machine VM02 is this. Okay, now I'm giving this. If I hit enter, will it ask the password? It is not supposed to ask the password. Why? Because I uploaded the keys of this machine into that server. If I hit it, it will directly enter. See, it did not ask the password. Why? Because this key I uploaded it, and this key, when I'm authenticating from this machine to this machine, it is first trying to match the key. If there is a key, then it will not ask you the password. If I am trying to hit another server, example, if I'm trying to hit another server, then I also have to upload my key into that server as well. Then only I can authenticate with that server, else I cannot do that. So understood, guys? Do you want me to do the same thing with other machine also? Create one other machine and do it, or else it's fine. If at all you
Do it
wanted
once
once again,
again. Yeah.
okay, fine. I'll do it very quickly. I'll create one more VM, taking it the resource group, and then I'll name it as VM03. Okay. So Ubuntu is fine, and the password authentication.
Yeah. Ravindra, the process is same for other Linux family like Unix.
Yes,
Uh,
yes, Linux, Ubuntu, all servers have the same process. No difference. Absolutely
the
same.
commands are all same, right?
Yes, absolutely same.
Okay, thank
For
you.
all Linux families, it is the same, exactly the same. You no need to go with any different process. It is absolutely the same process. So I'm creating another machine very quickly just to make you comfortable with this. This is important. Authentication is important, especially. So that's it. We have given this, and then
What is this login with Azure Active Directory preview?
Okay, that's something, like when we integrate on-premise, see, I have a Active Directory domain. By default, every user, every port subscription will have its own Active Directory. by default. You don't need to configure any Active Directory in the cloud. So when I have a Active Directory on premise, both are integrated. When both are integrated, if I create a machine, the machine will go into the on-premise Active Directory automatically. The machine entry will go into the on-premise Active Directory. So, like this is not discussed at the moment. We will see when we discuss about the Windows AD, Active Directory in the ninth module. I am going to talk about this in the ninth module, not now. Why? Because integrating I'll create a domain in my laptop as an on-premise domain server and integrate with the cloud Azure AD, and I create the users in the Active Directory. All users can go to the cloud automatically because I create the sync. I integrate them. Azure cloud user can come to on-premise machine. The on-premise machine user can go into the Azure as well using the local passwords, not with the email IDs. Microsoft email ID and all does not required anymore when you integrate. We'll talk about that in the ninth module. So this is a part there. I'm going to park this at the moment. So I'm creating another VM very quickly and then do the same thing just to make you understand this again very quickly. This would take a minute. We'll wait for that to happen. Is Sandy joined? No. Okay, this would take at least a minute. So these VM2 and VM2 because this I entered into the VM2, so I'll exit it from there. Now I'm into the VM1. Even if I enter into the VM2 again, it will never ask the password, guys, anymore. Why? Because the keys are available. I guess last time I copied, this is IP. If I hit enter, it will turn into VM2. See VM2 without asking anything because the keys are available. So now it is VM exited from that session. So now if I wanted to connect to this again, I need another putty session. So it might take a minute. It's still deploying. Okay, it is done. Very good. So now what I'll do, I'll pick up this machine IP. Okay, this is IP of the server, and then I'll connect it first. The username you had to give, which I used. Fine. Now I'm into the machine where I am actually in my home directory. So now if I wanted to connect from VM1 to VM3, what is the procedure? SSH Ravinder at the rate, and then I need to give the IP of that server. It will directly will not go. It will ask the password. I need to enter the password. Then only I can authenticate. But I don't want to give the authentication like this. Why? Because I am running a job. Job is hitting all the servers in the background. So now I'm into VM03. You can see it VM03. So I'll exit from here. Okay. Once again, SSH Ravinder at the rate IP, and then it'll ask the password. Okay, sorry, I given the wrong one. It is asking the password. right? I don't want to do this. So what I'll do again, I'll go to the VM1. This is the VM1. Now what I'll do, I will push this file where I am actually into the home directory, home Ravinder SSH. If I do this file is there. Which one? id underscore rsa dot pub. This is what I wanted to know. I wanted to push it to the target. So once I do this, what I'll do, scp, okay, and then file name id rsa dot pub file where I wanted to push into the VM3. The user is this. Sorry, I need to give the IP. This is IP. Okay. Before I
Give
run this,
forward slash, right? Forward that. Yeah,
where?
that's maybe next. Yeah. Yeah,
Can
you are
you
just pushing
come
the
again?
file to VM03, right? From VM01 to VM03. So
Uh-huh.
I thought that file name forward slash to that other file name, that VM03 file name.
This is
Yeah, go
VM0.
ahead, go ahead. Actually, I'm a bit confused, so you can go ahead.
Here, what I'm doing is just SCP, the file name and the username and the target server. That's it. Okay. And this is my target server where if I go to, this is my home directory. If I do ls-l, I don't have any file here. I don't have any file in the VM03 at the moment. I'm into the VM03 server here. Now, if I run this command now, it will ask just the password to authorize with that server. So I'm entering the password. Once I do this one, it will push the file to the target. Now, if I go to the target server, now if I do a ls-l, there will be a file which got pushed to copied to this file, this server.
Okay, okay.
So now what I have to do to authenticate from VM1 to VM3 automatically, I'll go to the cd.ssh. Okay, and then here also you'll have the same file. By default, authorized keys will be there. Now if I read that file, I don't have anything. It is a blank file. It's just a blank file. It is not giving any output. So now what I wanted to do, basically, I wanted to copy pwd. I'm into this one, so I wanted to go back one folder back. Now if I do -l, I have the file here. Okay, I have the file. This file I wanted to load into this authorized keys. How will I do that? Just cat, okay, and the reading that file underscore, okay, and putting that output into the .ssh is a directory, and what is a file under that directory? Authorized keys. Now if I enter this, the the key is uploaded into that authorized keys. Now if I come back to VM1, if I'm trying to do the SSH with VM3, it will not ask the password. That's what my final conclusion for this. This is a VM3. If I hit it, it will directly enter into the machine, into the VM3 directly. Why it is done? Because I also, this is a VM2, assume a case, this is a VM3. And in both the servers, I have applied my keys. That's why if I do the authentication in the reverse order, will it be done? What do you think? Will it be
Yes.
done?
Yes,
No,
yes.
no, it won't happen. Why? Because this server will have its own public keys in the private keys. Again, see, if I try to do it, let me show this. This is not vice versa concept, is one direction. If I have to make two direction, it's not possible. It's only one direction. So now if I go to here VM1, like sorry, SSH Ravinder at the rate VM1 IP. Let me take VM1 IP. It will not happen that way. That is a confusion. Of course, I do understand. So VM1 IP is this. See, it is not going directly. It's one direction only. It's not both the directions. Why? Because it does not have a private key. It is going with the combination, not with the one. This machine also will have its own private key combination again. So here in this diagram, it is also actually verifying your private key and public key. Both are generated together. It is taking that and verifying this. If I go to from here, this private key is different. It's not the same. So these and these are not matching. So that's how it is one direction. It's not a bi-directional thing. You cannot do the bi-directional thing here. Only one direction. So there, this is a central server where I'm doing all operations. So then I see example. I'm working daily on lots of servers. Row every day I have to enter my password. I don't want to do that. I can do this thing, but don't do this for that kind of thing. When you have to do some kind of operation from one server, central server, and all have to be auto updated with my operations, then you upload this key into all other servers. You do the operations here and it will push it to all the servers. It is a remote administration without asking password. Complete remote administration. Whatever I run, I point to any server, it will go there and run and then do the operation automatically. So this is something authentication, password authentication and SSH. Let me show one more thing. I forgot to say this. Let me build one more machine then. So what I'll do, this is a VM1, right? Where we have created exit from this and then pwd. Yes, I'm here. Cat id dot pub. I'm going to take this key, okay, and paste it in the notepad. I'm going to explain this as well. This is also important point. So this is the key. Oh, it is taking the, it should not have any okay. I'll just copy and then do it. That is a good thing. If I paste it into notepad, it will give some spaces. The key will get invalidated. Okay, this is fine. So what I'm trying to do, I'm going to create one more machine and then do the SSH authentication from the cloud itself. I no need to upload the keys and all. I can do that also. You can go to Ravi RG and this is a VM04 and then Ubuntu. That's fine. So size of the server, I'll just change it to this thing, 1 CPU. Now I'll go with SSH authentication and username. I just have to mention the username. That's it. The authentication should happen through this key. I will upload this key directly. So no need to upload the keys anymore. It will get created in the authorized keys. Okay, just highlighting itself is a copy here. So now I'll paste it, the complete key. Okay, I'm pasted the complete key into the machine SSH keys. Now I'm allowing the port. That's fine as usual. This thing to connect to the server, and then I'll just go with the standard disk. Premium does not required, and let's create this machine. Okay, review and create. And we have that method also. I'm just wanted to discuss. This is also same thing what we have done, but the cloud itself is doing for you when you do that.
It won't ask for the password, I guess, for this.
Right. You got the point. So we are pushing the file, uploading to authorized keys. That's completely taken care by the cloud.
Yeah. Yeah.
So no need to do it manually. That option meaning is that basically that's why I wanted to discuss this particular option meaning. Which one? This particular option meaning is that I discussed password only before. Now SSH keys. Okay. Let this get created. This would take some time at least.
Sorry, మీరు SQL Azure classes ఎప్పుడు చెప్తారో like it will take time for you or last you will start up.
That is after the storage and networking, we'll move to the SQL. SQL is vast topic, 15 classes roughly. SQL is a major topic, of course. That will go in deep. All operations I'll discuss. Like what we do on premise, everything we can do in the cloud, but they are different, not like same like on premise. We're quite different. I'm going to take you through every operation, no need to worry. So now I'm going with the VM4. I wanted to connect from the VM machine 1. So now if I go here, I wanted to connect. So how will I do connection? SSH Ravinder. I'm into the VM01. You just have a look at this. Okay. Now SSH username is Ravinder at the rate. Sorry, at the rate. This is our name. Sorry, did not copy it out. Now if I go and enter, it is not supposed to ask my password. That is what expected, right? Hit it. What it is? Yes, I wanted to connect. It will not ask my password. Just it is entered. It is asked you to just you wanted to connect. Are you sure you wanted to connect? Yes, I said. After that, it should ask the password, but it did not ask. Why? Because the keys are already there. Let me show that. So I'm into the current directory. Sorry, pwd, and then I need to go to SSH and then scat authorized keys. See, the key is there. That's why it is authenticated directly. It is the cloud uploaded the key automatically into this area. That is what the difference between the password authentication, SSH public key authentication. So this you don't do basically always, but for all the administrative actions, remote administrative actions, you publish the key like that and then do the remote administration. Every like you write a script and the script will go and do everything, same thing in all servers, all list of servers. So that time they use these authentications basically. Not all the cases we use this. And one thing I wanted to ask you, just one thing, this is also very important. If someone else is coming and trying to do it, can he do it auto authentication like any admin? Yes or no?
Can you come again?
If
No,
myself
because you need
is
public key, right? For
yeah,
that.
myself is Ravinder. I have done the this configuration. Someone is trying to log in. Example, Suresh is trying to log into the server, and then can he do the same thing? Can he connect by default because the keys are there? Can he do it?
No,
That
we
is,
can't connect.
yeah, it is a profile based. It's not like something in the real time. There will be a common admin account, common admin account. Through that we will do these operations, not with a particular user like a profile. We will not build this, this method using particular user profile. We will go with a common account. Then using that common account, we will submit the keys, and using that common account only you run the scripts, all that administrative operations. So when I'm creating a key, it is appended my name also. If you look at the keys, if I go to the, okay, I'm into the same thing, cat authorized keys. If I look at what happened, it's gone or what? What? Sorry. What is a mistake I've done? I have the keys here itself. I need to read this file. Sorry, I am thinking something else. So cat id underscore r. If I read this one at the end, you can see my name, my profile name. So it works for the profile based. So you do like this thing using your administrative account, who everybody can use that account and go there and then do the operations. It is like that. Let's go with the further operations then. This is done. Authentication, everybody should be clear in this area, I feel, by this time. And password authentication and SSH public key authentication, both should be clear for everyone, because I did discuss for 3-4 times now, right? So now let me go with the other rest of the operations. So I wanted to add a disk to the existing server. How will I add it? This is a different method. So how can I see how many disks we have? Disk DF means disk file system. I wanted to see the everything. So if I look at here, what are the sizes? I can see 450 MB, 93 MB, 29 GB. This is the OS drive, basic root directory, and then temp file system. This is the size at the moment. It is 5 MB. If you look at all together, it is roughly 50 GB. That's it. But I wanted to add 100 GB file, 100 GB directory, so that I can use it for my operations. How will I do that? So we'll talk about that very quickly. So I'm going to close the class at 9:30 itself. I have to go out. Some personal work I have. So let me go to the server. Where it is, virtual server. Any of the server, like I'm on the VM1. I'll go to the VM1. I can go to the disk. Okay, I'll add a disk, one new disk. I wanted to create a new disk, empty disk. The disk name for the identification VM01 data, the drive name. Resource group, I use the same thing, and I don't want the premium. I just want the standard drive, and the drive size would be 100 GB. Create it. So we are creating 100 GB drive on the machine. So learning the Linux operations also a good thing nowadays. Why? Because the SQL Server is officially launched into the Linux as well in 2007 itself. We are 2 years ahead actually. So if people are wanted to get familiar with this in Linux and family also, that is a good thing. Maybe in the future it is required. Not at the moment. No one moved it into the Linux side because people are not familiar. There are no resources who can support that area. So SQL Server is not deployed into Linux, but it is going to be very soon. After couple of years, not complete all environment will go into there, but yes, people prefer that as well, because that gives a good performance at OS level, and the voice is also free. Means minimal cost if you go with the enterprise. So now I created a drive. Now I wanted to add this 100 GB drive into the existing machine. How will I do that? This is the machine I've added, right? VM01. So we have the full documentation. I'm going to give it. This is a document you need to follow to do it. So I'm going to explain it clearly step by step, and I'll submit. I'll give the video and document both today. No need to worry. So if I look at here, I don't find the disk which I added. It is there on the machine, but it is not formatted. So if checking checking this is equivalent to checking here, where if I go to here, if I added drive, I don't see directly, right? That is what it is. It is not showing the disk which I added. It is just showing what are already mounted, what are already formatted and added. If I wanted to see it, then what I have to do in the Windows Server, go to my computer, this PC, and then go to disk management. Okay, there I can see my complete disks. I'm comparing to make you understand. Oh God, it is taking time. Disk management. If I go to here, it will show me allocated files, unallocated files, and raw files also, initialized disk, everything it will show up. I wanted to see that. How will I see that in the Linux using this command? Which command? I'm going to do this command. If I run this command, it is equivalent to that thing. Which thing? This. Sorry. This, you are seeing everything, formatted, unformatted, like allocated, unallocated, everything you can see it. So if I run this command in the Linux, it shows the same thing, this thing, dmsg and grep scsi. If I do this one, it is showing, see, there are SBA drive and SDA and SDB are attached. But the third one, this is loading iSCSI like transport class V2. This is the one is not attached. This is the one we need to attach. It is saying this, like this file system is not attached, which we added as 100 GB. I wanted to attach it. This is as showing as an extra drive, but it is not showing up in the disk system, means which is not attached. Now what I have to do, I have to format it first to attach it. First I need to format. Let's do that. So here sudo fs fdisk format disk and dev underscore it is SDC, it is not SDD. In the document when I was doing it was SDD, that's why I kept it like that. It is SDC. This is the file, this is the drive. The last one, always the newly added drive will show up at the end only, 99%. Okay, you choose the last one, SDC. Now it will format that drive. Okay, then you need a new partition. So you will hit new. I have given everything. Use n command to add a new partition and print what and all you have. It print for a primary partition, accept the rest of the default. So I am creating a new partition, that's why I'll keep it n using that storage. Okay, now it is asking primary partition, is it a primary or extended? Extended means you wanted to add it to existing or you wanted to create a new one. Yes, it is a primary one. Okay, let's go with the defaults. You no need to choose here a partition number, it will take by default to one, default one, let that take. So here I did not mention thing, just go with the defaults. Okay, it is first taking the sectors. Sectors means the starting points of sectors of that particular drive. That's fine. We don't get into that details now. So hit enter. Last sector, first sector and last sector it is giving. That's fine. And it is created the it is formatted 100 GB. It is detected. See, created the new partition of one type Linux and the size is 100 GB now. Now you have done. Now print the partition by you wanted to print it. This is a lowercase only, not uppercase. I kept it by mistake, I guess. Fine. So now if I go to here, I'm going to print the details of that drive. If I go to here, what it is saying is the device name. It is given a device name, dev SDC1, and it is 100 GB, and the type is Linux, the file system type. Now, why it is given a number to SDC? We have given SDC only, but if you look at the file system, where I read the file system somewhere, right? Here itself. Sorry. Here I read that it's a df-h disk file system. If you look at here, SDA1, SDA15, SDB1, it is given a number for each partition. Like that, here also it is given SDC1 partition number it is. If I create another partition, it will give SDC2 like that within that. So it is given a number. Don't confuse that. We are given SDC, why it is giving SDC1. It is a partition number basically. Okay, then if we go to here, this is the detail it has, but Linux will have its own storage structure table in the background. I've created a storage. I wanted to make the entry of this storage. If you wanted to do that, you have to write the details. Like created a file structure, and I wanted to create this entry into the Linux storage table in the background. For that, you need to go with the W will write the details into the storage tables, that Linux storage table, so that when it is boot up, it will pick up that storage. If you don't do this right, then it will not pick up the storage. So now it has written it. So the partition table has been altered, which means that the partition table also made this entry now. Okay, the entry has been made. Now you need to format the disk with particular file system. Basically you emptied the file, you formatted the one, But when you formatted after that in Windows, what is the format we use? NTFS, network file system, right? Here you need to go with the ext4 format. You have to use this command to format with the Linux file system. We have formatted with empty, we made that empty, and it is detected this much amount of space. Now I wanted to format to use for the Linux family. So for that I need to use the ext4 format in the Windows operating system, NTFS. Here SDC1, SDD1, but here it is SDC1 because the file name is dev/sdc1. Hit enter. Once you enter, it will format the blocks. Creating the journal, you have to wait. It will do it on its own. Nothing you have to do. It will take some time because it is 100 GB, right? It takes roughly 30 to 40 seconds to format that. So it is going on, and the blocks, creating the journal blocks have been done. All right, it is done. Like it is formatted, it is allocated. Now I created a storage. I have to mount it to some folder here. You need to. I'm just creating a folder called sudo make directory. So let me do this one. I'm going to create a directory. So sudo make directory and data drive. I'm creating a directory. Okay. It will create a folder, just a folder it is basically. I am going to attach this storage, 100 GB storage, to this folder so that that folder will show up as a 100 GB. So there is a small command mount, sudo mount. I'm giving the storage to that folder from the OS. We are mapping it actually. Sudo mount dev sdc1, not sdd1, to that particular folder. Which one? Data drive. Now if I hit it, this storage will be mounted under that data drive, this particular folder. Now it is done. Now if I go to df disk file system -h, then I can see the 100 GB dev sdc1 98 GB storage. Okay, here we have added a new drive called data drive. Under, if I wanted to go to that drive, cd data drive. Sorry, I need to give slash. I'll go to inside in it. I don't have any file at the moment. I wanted to create a directory. Make dir, as in my case, test1. Oh, okay, permissions are denied. So sudo make directory. We go with the so root user permissions. Make directory test to two files I'm creating. Okay, ls, two directories have been created. Now I can do anything in this directory. It is 100 GB capacity. I can load, I can create files, I can do all sort of things in this. I can install the database service into this and use as a storage. So this is like a brand new file system on the server now. I wanted to I wanted to create the files, file1, file2, file3, like, oh, I need the sudo permission. Fine. Now if I go to ls-l, so it has created files and directories. These are the directories. D means directory, without D is a file basically. So you can just follow this like a document. You can do what I'm doing here basically, right? So this is something, just maybe you don't work on the Linux operating system, but having an idea is a good thing. We have the concept, that's why I discussed, though it is not useful for us. Even we don't have a Linux servers, I can say. We did not implement SQL servers on the Linux. There are 1-2 servers which are implemented for testing, but not for production. We have installed, actually. We tested it, functionalities, how it works kind of, but there is a plan, pipeline. Maybe we will implement in the near future, maybe after 5-6 months, we might implement. If you wanted to explore doing things, you can use Linux as well. If you wanted to upgrade your skill set, maybe in the next couple of years or after 3-4 years, not completely, but adding, knowing the SQL Server, maintaining on the Linux platform is also a advantage, kind of advantage. Not mandatory, but if you know it, then that's good, kind of thing will happen in the market. So slowly get into the Linux as well when you get some time. It's a good to learn. And one thing I wanted to discuss very quickly. So I did not discuss this thing, right? Cloud Shell. Let me quickly discuss that. If I go to here, Cloud Shell. So there are two shells are we have. One is a PowerShell which will be used for Windows servers. One is a Bash shell for which will be used for the Linux family. So you have your here PowerShell and Bash shell. When I click it over here, it will install automatically the shells in the cloud. So I'm going the Bash. I'm switching it to the Bash. So Bash shell, and then do the create the storage for the Bash shell. Once you do it, you have to delete also. I mean, it is extra billing for you.
This is somewhat like Linux here in the cloud.
Yes, it is somewhat like it is exactly Linux. I'm going to show this.
Okay.
It takes some time. Let it get take. This will take a minute, guys. Right. Try again, louder. What happened? It is creating now. Initializing your account for Cloud Shell. It takes a minute. Succeeded. So I wanted to switch between them. Bash and PowerShell, you can switch at any point of time. Okay. Now I connected to here. It will create a, like a host name. If I look at, it is random name basically. It's just a random host. It is not a host. It is a service actually. It's like act as a Linux platform. If I go to PWD, I have a home directory. I can do the same thing here also. This looks like like not off window. I can connect to this Cloud Shell using my credentials. You have this shell.azure.com. If I go to there, okay, it's opening directly, I guess. So I am going with my default directory because I logged in. That's why it is detected. If you don't log in, shell.azure.com, you give your subscription details, it will connect here instead of this. Because it's off screen, it does not look good actually. So I'm going with the full screen with my subscription. Shell.azure.com. If I log out here, example, if I log out here, if I enter this one, it will ask my subscription details, login and password. Once I log in, it will authenticate with the cloud. In order to do this, you have to install that one, which I did actually already. So it is initializing directly. Why? Because I installed that. I went it here. It asked for the bash or PowerShell. I choose the bash. Fine. Now it is a bash. Now if I wanted to connect to the VM1 SSH Ravinder at the rate, let me take that VM machine IP. This is IP. Paste. It will ask the password. Yes, I wanted to connect. Fine. Now this is the host name is VM01. Now df -h. I have this file system on that server. 98 GB is out of this 1% is used. 93 GB is free. So it did not give 100%. Why? Because like in the pen drive also you will get 500 GB hard disk. It will detect roughly 450 something like that. It is. It did not give 100 GB. So like this, I wanted SSH in another server from this server. SSH, the same thing, guys. Again, I don't want to get into much details here as well, because same thing you can do what I have done from this machine before. This is like another Linux server you feel. So if I wanted to connect to virtual machine 2, then what I have to do, go to just get the IP and then give it. That's it. It will connect to that VM2. Why it is connected? Tell me now. I wanted to ask this question. It is connected automatically without asking password. Why? Tell me, guys.
Because it is integrated to cloud. We are
Already
using the
we have
cloud.
created key, right?
No. It is integrated fine. Integration is also, but I need to authenticate with the machine. When I connected to the VM1, it asks the password and all to connect to the server. But when I connected here from VM1 to VM2, it did not ask the password. Why? Because I registered the keys from the VM1 to VM2. I'm into the VM1 session now. From VM1 session to VM2, I can go absolutely. From SSH, Ravinder. It is a cloud machine, but I went into the VM1, VM server. From VM1 server, I can go to VM2, VM3 automatically. That is what we have
Yeah,
done so
because
far.
it has public key, right?
Right. Very good. You got the point. That has a public key. That's why it went automatically there. So if I go to here, if I go to the Cloud Shell again, now if I connect to this machine, will it go or not? Tell me now.
It
Without
will go.
authentication. Look
It will
at
go.
this. Look at this and tell me. Look at this and tell me.
No.
It will not go now. Why? Because we are into the VM2. It will ask the password now. That you need to understand. Now it is asking the password because you are authenticating from VM1 to VM3. If I go back, if I exit, where it will go? It will go to VM2. It will,
One.
the order you come
Okay.
in, the order it will go back. Exit, it will go to the VM2. Okay, see VM2. Now, if I exit again, it will go to VM1. See VM1. Now, if I do SSH Ravinder at the rate the VM3 the IP this is, now it will go into that server automatically. It is like that. Got the point? This Cloud Shell is like a OS again, another OS. Without a OS, another cloud platform OS it is. You can do anything from this. Just it's a platform to connect to other servers. You need a putty to connect to other servers, right? This is kind of, you treat it as a putty, so that from where you can do SSH to all the servers. Just like a platform from where you can connect to other servers, do all the operations from here. You can connect to the physical servers as well on premise if you have a VPN from here itself. You can do all remote administration using this shell.
Bash is
Azure.shell.
for Linux, right? And
Right.
PowerShell for Windows.
Windows. If I'm working with Windows, I'll switch to this. This we have topic. We have separate topic. I'm going to discuss this. I parked this discussion. I did not come to this discussion yet. This is the last module, this Cloud Shell. Where when I was giving the introduction, I said this is the last module kind of. So not now, but still it is a situation. That's why I came to here to make you use of this. Just you'll get familiarized with the shell as well. Understood? Any doubts from anyone? Or did not understand anything? So that's all for today, guys.
Why we are using putty, actually we can practice here itself, right?
Yeah, absolutely. You can practice, but I just shown like this is also the way. But installing this is create a storage account and all that will charge you a bit. So you have to bear that. So it is created cloud shell. Within that, it is created some resource and all. So this is a resource storage account. The storage account is very minimal. It is roughly, if you keep it for whole month, you will get 25 rupees. You can run it if at all you want. If you are okay with 25 rupees per month, you can run that. I mean, no need to go with the putty and all. This will charge you roughly 20 to 25, 30 rupees maximum per month, 1 rupee per day, roughly.
Now we are using trail version now, so we can create it.
Of course, you guys can absolutely do, because in your
Yeah.
trial version, but once your trial period is over, it will get decommissioned automatically because you're not authorized, you don't have a money in your account. They don't charge you for that. It is decommissioned. It will be wiped off automatically. It will not upgrade on its own. You have to go there from the free subscription to you have to upgrade it to pay as you go. Then the bill will be to your credit card. That way it is.
So whatever we do in free trial, like VMs, everything will be decommissioned automatically once the free trial expired.
Yes, everything will be
So
decommissioned
before that only we
automatically.
need to upgrade so that it will be saved, right?
Yes.
Okay.
As you are into trial version, you can create and forget, that is not an issue. But when you pay as you go, you absolutely clean up all your thing, else you'll get the bill. You have to bear that. I actually clean up everything after the class. Then I'll close my laptop. That's my habit. If I don't do that, I'll get the bill in thousands because I create every day a lot of things. And if I left that, I'm gone. All the classes fee I have to pay to the Microsoft. Let me stop this recording, guys.